What's up, Liron here. Today I want to teach you how to create a sense of depth by simplifying the scene almost to its abstract components. I'm a strong believer in that if the scene works abstractly, it will work when adding more details. And I want to show you how easy it is to create that sense of depth and different elements like the background and the foreground in a very simple way, a very simple approach. So with that being said, let's get started. I'm going to show you using these two examples. We're going to do them from start to finish real quick. We're going to start with the longer scene, meaning longer portrait oriented. And again, the goal here is to take something abstracted and still show some depth, okay? And this is a challenge. The vanishing point is somewhere around here. So here we have the set of a couple of buildings like that. We're going to keep it fairly simple, do it a la prima, as they say. So we have the buildings here, then the street kind of moves towards us like that. We have the bus somewhere around here. And really, again, the goal is to show that even using some abstract, almost abstract shapes, we can still produce the sense of depth. So here is the shadow under the bus. There is this shadow coming across the street like that. There's a motorcycle here, like so, and it casts a shadow to the left. And believe it or not, that's probably almost it. Maybe just a couple of people here casting a shadow here. But the main attraction here in this painting is going to be this building here to the left that maybe connects to a bit of a smaller section here. This is what will create the depth for us. So with that being said, we can start painting this one layer, one go, and I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to seriously simplify the values and also edit this one quite significantly. So the sky and ground are going to stay white. We don't need really to have them be at any value. And what I'm going to do is use a bit of carbazole violet and a bit of nickel azo yellow. This will produce some nice muted grays. And we're going to start with the back. Now, this is the building that we need to get fairly light. So we're going to do that, go just for that. So this is probably as dark as we'll need it. And you'll see how we create this nice sense of depth by only using several values that are rather simple. I'm going to add a bit more purple to cool this building down the more downwards we go. And you could always add some details like to the side or something like that, but we don't need too much here. And paint around the bus and around some details near the bottom, like this. Now here it gets a little interesting. These buildings are going to cast a shadow to the left, and this shadow is going to be much darker than the building in the background, which is the real magic here. The buildings here and the bus are what's gonna cause this to look nice and to look like there is some depth to it. So what we're gonna do is first I actually want to mix the parts that are in the light of the building. So this is somewhere around here, and maybe add a bit more yellow. And again, this is kind of an experimentation. I don't know exactly what I'll be able to produce here, but in any case, this is the part of the building that's well lit. I'm actually considering removing that completely and leaving it probably just almost white. You know what, let's play around with what we've got here. So I'm gonna lose some of that paint. I'm gonna start establishing the darks on the left side. So because we're doing this kind of in one go, I'm gonna try not to touch the right side too much, but if I do, it's not a disaster. And from here and downwards, I'm gonna start establishing some shadows. Now notice how already this building feels a little closer than this one in the background. So here we have a shadow in the background that reaches all the way to the front and up until the bus, like so, all the way to the bottom of the bus. And it actually starts here because the light comes from the right. So the shadow is a little to the left of the bus, but it does drag from this wheel. So kind of like that. The left part of the bus should be quite dark as well. And notice how what I'm doing has a bit of an abstract feel to it. And that's exactly what I'm after here, actually. So the bus I'm going to use a bit of yellow just to indicate that light is reflected from somewhere on its front part. You can see like that. And maybe cool it down just a bit towards the bottom, like so. But then we're gonna leave a white part here. That's for there is this kind of that's the way they designed them. They have this light part around the bottom, which actually plays to our advantage. And here we have this shadow that's at the back, coming around here. This entire area is pretty much in the shadow, like this, just painting around that person here. This building to the right should be quite dark because it's the closest to us. And again, we're going to create that variation in sense of depth using the variation in values. So here we go, all the way to the bottom. This is actually goes all the way to the very bottom up until here. And it casts the shadow that we see to the left pretty much. And then we have this shadow in the very foreground. It goes something like this, and I'm gonna make this one rather warm because it's close to us. It goes like this, and it plays with the shape of this sidewalk here, or whatever that is. There's this this part is in the shadow, like so. There's maybe a person here. It doesn't really matter, maybe two people casting a shadow. Now here we have the motorcycle guy. We're gonna go like this, maybe a head, then the body, and the body of the bicycle, and the bike, sorry. Continue like that. Now here we have a shadow that it casts from both tires and then merges into one kind of lump. A bit crooked, so I'm gonna straighten it. Now I want to darken these shadows under the wheels of the bus, go round and round, like so, significantly darken them. Darken some spots here on the windows on the side, like this, maybe a bit of darkness here, a bit of darkness here. And you see that with just these few details, probably this should be a little darker, maybe there's some stores here or something like that. This should have areas that are darker, like this, and this cast shadow in the foreground should be much darker. Okay, I started yellow, but now when I reconsider it, it should be darker. But now you see how with barely any details we created this interesting sense of depth with the building in the background. We have this strong sunlight pouring through, so there's a lot going on here, and it works really well, and it's interesting, and this is really abstract. It's very abstracted, and that's exactly how we want it to work. So now we're going to switch gears and go back to drawing. We're going to draw this other scene, and you'll see the beautiful sense of depth, a bit of a more natural one. Okay, so here we have a scene from rural France, and we're going to have a couple of rooftops here. I'm going to try and freehand most of it. Another rooftop over here. It's a bit of a claustrophobic scene, so I'm going to try and open it up just a little, but if I fail, that's fine. Now, so basically we have a home here, we have a car, like this. We have another car kind of in the driveway, maybe that's a store, I'm not really sure, like that. There's a person here, a couple of people here and there. But the main part really is the background. I'm going to show you now. It's kind of a mountain, beautiful mountainscape. And then we have this tree. It's very dark, okay? And this is where the value is going to come from. We also have this shadow in the foreground here as well. We have shadows cast by the cars. We have a bunch of things here, but let me show you. This is basically all the drawing we need. I'm just going to put in some windows, like so. You don't need much. You really don't need much to establish this. This is the storefront. It's actually a painting I did a while back and I really like and enjoyed doing. So with that being said, we can start painting this. So once again, another beautiful scene, and we'll start with we're going to simplify the values again, and so the sky is going to be white. We don't need any of that. The sky is going to be white. This car is going to be white as well. And we'll start with the background, actually. I want to start with the background, so it's super light. I'm going to cover this chimney because it's going to be a little darker in just a moment. So kind of like that. And that's our background, like so. We may need to give this just a bit of drying time. And this background is a light mid-value. Okay, it's not a dark one, but it's also not a super light one. It's kind of a mid-value. So we're gonna go like that. Now I want to start working on the walls of this house. So we're gonna add a bit of red because these walls are a little red, a bit of yellow, keeping it very simple, but this should be dark. Okay, the walls of this house are rather among the darker values here. So this isn't dark enough. I'm gonna add a bit of blue, a bit of red. Now notice we have to keep this one warm. Notice how, and you're gonna see this in just a couple of moments, how this makes the background pop. Okay, and this may look super dark right now. It's actually not that dark. I'm gonna cover this, the storefront. I'm gonna cover everything up, but I will leave some space around the cars. Okay, bit of yellow here just for fun. A little too much water, but we'll see how that goes. Negative painting around the house and around this perhaps person. There's this sign here that I want to keep like so. And I'm going to darken it. And notice how, again, this makes the building itself pop as opposed to the background. It's kind of sent to the back. And we'll soon complete the rest and it'll make much more sense. So this car has a shadow cast from under it. Actually, the front of the car, and this one is really red, so we're going to use some strong red here. Kind of like that. Leave a bit of a highlight to the left. Like so. Keep this small gap of light. That's important. The tires should be a little larger, so like that. And probably a bit darker. So I'm going to come back with a bit of stronger blue. Put them in. Maybe some of the windows should be a little darker as well. Then we have this sign here. I'm gonna have a bit of a cast shadow to the right. All sorts of random objects that are gonna cast a shadow to the right. This car is a little lighter, so I'm gonna grab some yellow, maybe a bit of, I don't want it to be green per se, because green is for the foliage there. So this will do. Like so. And notice how the temperature as well makes the difference. You get this background that's very cool, and then you have this front that's a little warmer. Maybe around the bottom of this truck we'll have to darken it significantly. Like this, cast shadow to the right. Like that. There are some tail lights here. A bit of a shadow coming through here. Now I'm gonna do this, it's almost dry, but I'm gonna put this paint in here. Now the rooftop of this should be a little darker, so I'm gonna darken it, but keep it a little more neutralized just to create some difference with the wall itself. And it will be similar to the background, but not identical. I actually want it to be just a little bit darker. Okay, but for the left rooftop, we're gonna leave it as is. And the reason for that is that it's quite light. It's a bit lighter than the right rooftop. Now here comes the cool part. I'm gonna add this small chimney here. It's gonna cast a bit of a shadow to the right, probably a little darker. A bit of blue, like so. So a bit of a shadow here. I'm gonna do a bit of details on the chimneys here and the shadow to the right. There's this strong shadow here. And now comes the really cool part. So this tree, I'm gonna place that in because I think the background is pretty much dry. And notice how it will make it inevitably pop and look closer because the background is so dark. I'm actually gonna need to darken that wall as well in just a moment. Negative paint around this car here. Like so. Bit of this here. Now we get the shape of the car. It's as accurate as it needs to be. It's not super accurate, but that's fine. This part's in the shadow. I'm gonna add this shadow here at the front. Maybe make it a little warmer. So a bit more red, a bit more yellow. I don't care like putting wet and playing around with the paint I have on paper. I actually have a lot of fun doing that. Now I do want to darken the walls of the house just a little bit. Because I think they need to be darker, and I don't care that it's kind of dry but not really dry. That's fine. Like so. And a bit of random bits of highlights and shadow here and there. And with that, we're pretty much done. I'm just gonna add a bit of, and I may add just a light yellow glaze here. I know a lot of people, including me by the way, don't like sometimes when there's a lot of white highlights of the paper. We have these shingles here. I'm gonna need a little more flow to get them. Shingle, shingle. A little more water, like that. Trying not to overdo it, but I'm having a bit of a hard time with this dry brush. I'm gonna add a bit more water, just to improve some of the flow. That's a little better. Also here, I don't mind that, wet and wet. And now we can also put in some windows, wet and wet, so. And this is super dark already, so it's gonna be hard, but you'll see them once it dries. Actually, they're quite visible. And then the storefront here, there's this door around here. It's gonna be visible. Bit of a strong shadow here. And we're pretty much done. There is a shadow on the tree, like so. And that'll darken that. Now I could go with a very thin yellow glaze. Let's do that. Let's try and be brave. So I'm adding a bit of yellow to the floor so that it's not all that white. Maybe it gives a bit of a feeling of sunlight or something like that. And maybe it ruins the whole thing. I don't know. But we go like this. And the entire goal here is just to create that sense of depth. So when you look back, and I'm gonna make some stronger shadows on the chimneys. So again, the only goal is when you look back, you can see the differentiation from this tree and the background. And sometimes you may need to darken things a bit. You may need to darken this background in order to make it look really good. It really will depend on the type of painting and all sorts of characteristics of the scene. But this pretty much shows you how using this change of values you can create the sense of depth that a lot of people are after. One last thing I will do is put this person on the right. So there's a person here kind of working on the car or doing something. That's that, a bit of shadow, and we're pretty much done. Let me zoom out and conclude. So here we go, the first painting and the second one. And again, the goal here is to create almost an abstract composition that still conveys value and perhaps a bit of a sense of the scene. I think I went a little too contrasty on this one especially. Here it was more deliberate, but overall you get the sense of depth and you get a feeling of something that you're looking through. And you can play around with that so you can create different shapes that cut through the lighter shapes. So here we have this large building and the bus, and here we have a house, the mountains on the background and a house cutting through it. Okay, so you can play around with these compositions. Maybe you could just decide very randomly, by the way, to add this kind of a, maybe electricity poles or street lights or something like that to cut through. And that'll work as well, you know, you kind of have to improvise and see whatever works for you and try it out. Here as well, I could kind of add a bit of a shape like this. It just helps to connect. Like here, there's a lot of shapes that go like that, so perhaps creating this kind of line will be more beneficial than here even. Just, you know, passing through the street, there's maybe a couple of street lights here, I don't know, but also vertical, horizontal lines just to cut through that composition. So these things really help, and it's my theory that if it works abstractly, it will work when it's finalized with the full details, and if it doesn't, it may not work. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one, and now let's wrap it up. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you learned something new and maybe gained some motivation and understanding of how simple it is to create that differentiation within the foreground, midground, background, and how to create that sense of tunnel maybe, or you're looking through something and the different compositional elements that support it. I will mention this, and I did mention this before, some people, including myself, don't like to have so much white as one of the dominant colors of the painting. I actually prefer everything to be covered with some kind of paint, and then establish the highlights. So for the next time, if I make a bit of a slower video, I may do that. But for now, I really wanted to keep it a la prima, as you say, and just super duper simple. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to give it a like if you have, and also subscribe if you still haven't. And I will talk to you again in another vid real soon.